We experienced some occasional audio issues during our broadband affordability panel at the CBAN Spring Forum. As we began, CBAN's John Willow, on the right, introduced each of our panelists. From John's right to left, our panelists were Marcattilio with the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, or ILSR, Renee Knoop with Consortia Consulting, and Sarah Claycomb with GRM Networks. Opening remarks were from Marcattilio with the ILSR.
For people that don't know ILSR, we're a research and advocacy nonprofit. We work nationwide, but we've got offices in Minneapolis. We work on locally controlled infrastructure of all types and small business development. I work on the Broadband initiative, which has been around for about 15 years. And we track and research and write about community-owned broadband solutions, everything from municipalities to telephone, electric cooperatives, that kind of thing. We also try when we can to build tools for communities when we think it might be useful to them to demystify policy or help with programs like this. So one of the things we did was last summer, we built an ACP dashboard. It exists at acpdashboard.com. There's both a desktop and a mobile site if you want to check it out, which kind of just looked to take all the USAC spreadsheets, which reports all the ACP data, and collate it in a way that is actually useful to people who don't enjoy daily basis. And so we've got a whole bunch of statistics there about enrollment numbers from the zip code level all the way up to the congressional district level and how long we think the money's going to last. So I did pull some numbers before coming here. 17 million households enrolled currently. That's a little less than a third of all the eligible households in the United States, about 52 million. There are a bunch of different ways that you can qualify, as we know. That number, the percentage of enrolled households drops to about the mid-20s if you are a tribal member. And so there's a lot of work to be done there. We've seen a slow but steady climb of eligible households getting enrolled. After the fund was announced, there was a flat period right after that transition from the emergency broadband benefit over to ACP. But then we've seen a slow but steady climb. And some states are doing better than others, unsurprisingly.
Renee and Sarah, when I ask you your first questions as well, please feel free to tell everybody a little bit about what you do and the context. And, but I do have a follow-up question, and it's kind of a broad. Actually, you may have already answered. I'm wondering what the national statistics show about the adoption of the ACP. And I know that we talked about low numbers, but like, what do we interpolate from that? What do we?
Yeah, so I realize now that I answered your second question first, and now we're at another question. So
that's okay.
So national numbers are slowly on the rise, but not certainly where we would want them to be. You know, I think the only really analogous program that existed before this was Lifeline, which I'm sure folks in the room here have more longstanding familiarity with than me, but Lifeline historically, I think, is about 14, 15, 16% of eligible households enrolled. And so ACP is doing better than that, but still not right where we would want them, where we would want it to be. So the FCC's got this new money coming out, which is supposed to go directly to folks that are signing people up. Nationally speaking, to your first question about providers, lots of providers, big and small, are participating. I know that roughly, speaking of rural America, NTCA members are around 80% of those providers are participating, which is good to see. There are, as far as I can tell, about 60 municipal providers participating in ACP, which is good to see, despite all the reporting requirements that go along with it, which we know are a challenge to folks. I know in Iowa, Pella for sure is participating. I'm sure there are others who we have missed in this room who are participating as well. And then at least 200 electric and telephone cooperatives are participating in ACP at present. And so it's good to see those numbers high. It would be nice to see them higher so that we can get enrollment numbers up nationwide.
Thank you. Renee, next question is for you. I'm wondering, and this is a conversation actually that we've had before, so it's nothing sneaky, but we're wondering, why do some providers, what reasons do some providers give for not participating in the ACP? What do you think's at the base of that?
Okay, so my name is Renee Knoop. I'm with Consortia Consulting, and I work on the regulatory team. So when ACP came out, or actually EBBP, the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program, it was my task to read the order and understand it. So I do a lot of that. I help people get signed up. Companies get signed up with USAC. I do training, get lots of questions regarding ACP. So kind of as one of my cohorts calls me, the ACP queen. And some of the reasons why providers, especially smaller ones, I think they're a little bit afraid of it. It can seem kind of cumbersome. If you're not an ETC, which I know some of you are not, which stands for Eligible Telecommunications Carrier, there's an extra step to go through. You have to have FCC approval. Not a big deal, but we just have to have get that approval before we can submit the election to USAC. I'm working with a company right now that is an ETC, and USAC's came back with 3 or 4 questions, about things on their website, or why do you have this company? You didn't list all their affiliates. So there's lots of little things that USAC looks at. We helped Fort Dodge get signed up. They didn't have a phone number yet. USAC would not approve them as a service provider until they had a phone number on their website.
Does that seem cumbersome? Do you think it's overly cumbersome, or do you think this is good due diligence? This is just your opinion.
It depends on the day. Some days I'm like, really? Are you kidding me? You're asking me all these questions, but I understand their due diligence. They have to make sure that everything is, every I's dotted, every T's crossed, because it is, you're handing money out from the Treasury. So I understand the reason. So I think it is probably more due diligence on that part, but it can be cumbersome, and maybe, Sarah can attest to that too. It's a lot of work. If you're a short staff and or small staff, I should say, you do work with, you've got a customer that comes in, or you have to help them get approved. There's tasks or times where when you enroll somebody, you get an error. Okay, what do I do with that error? How do I solve that? Those types of things. And a lot of companies don't know where to go, who to reach out to, what to do. There's a lot of compliance that goes with it. You have to make sure that every ACP customer has a bill message that talks about a complaint process. There's consent forms that have to be signed. You have to, keep all this on record. If there's non-payment, you can only disconnect them if you've sent them a 30, 60, and 90-day notice. That doesn't work well with a lot of companies because of the fact that that's tough when you have a bundle and you disconnect their phone in 30 days, but you can't disconnect their internet for 90 days. So there's things like that can be cumbersome to a small provider as well as a large provider too. But small provider, sometimes it's just it gets a little bit labor intensive.
So you covered a lot of this. No, it's really good. But in your answer, but I'm kind of wondering, do you have a sense, can you quantify for any small providers out here who are thinking about the ACP, can you kind of quantify the actual time and resources required for staff? Like when you start working with someone who's going to start accepting ACP, what do you tell them to expect?
It depends on if they're, first of all, an ETC or not, because if they're an ETC, they're going to already understand the NLAD system that you work with, because their staff already knows how to work with that system, enroll them in Lifeline. If they don't, and I'm going to use Erica Muscatine, they're not an ETC. They had not ever done it before. And so we did a lot of training with them to get them up to speed with the NLAD system, making sure they understood how to do the claims and if there's transfers and things like that. I don't know, there's probably, 5 to 7 hours maybe that we spent with training. Now I barely hear from them because their staff is fully educated on it. So it kind of depends on the company, and most companies, and maybe GRM, you're the lead on that. Maybe not everybody has somebody that's definitely dedicated to that, and they don't read the rules and they don't know, so they have to rely on, the consultants to help them with that. So it's kind of a tough question to answer, because if they're an ETC, they'll understand it a little bit better than if they're not right out of the chute.
Actually, that's a really key distinction. So thank you for that. Sarah, moving on to you. GRM Networks participates in and actively publicizes the ACP to its customers. So I was wondering if you could talk about your experience with the rollout and the ongoing implementation on the company side, challenges, benefits. How's that experience been?
Well, I'm Sarah Claycomb. I'm with GRM Networks. We also have SCC Networks and LTC Networks as subsidiaries. We have about 410 ACP subscribers. We were part of the EBBP, so I kind of feel like our rollout was maybe a little easier because, we kind of had the basics, of it. And as you were reading off your list of things, we are in compliance. Which that made me feel good. So Jenny Neff and I, she's our regulatory, regulatory person. She and I read the order together to make sure that we understood exactly what was going to be expected of GRM. We kind of felt like we didn't have a lot of backup from USAC, so we had to, when it first rolled out, we were told that they were going to be providing us consent forms. We never received those. So we have developed our own consent form and made sure that it, followed the rules. As far as in making sure that we got those from every customer and that they're in our billing system, we have them recorded. Getting folks enrolled has been a bit of a challenge. It's become a little bit easier. We face two challenges of the customer not remembering how they had enrolled in the National Verifier. Like they didn't remember what child's name they used for their benefit qualifying person.
Okay.
Not getting their address correctly at first. That, did they put it all in caps? Did they just put the street name in caps, but the city was in lowercase? We had a lot of those challenges to work through. And then if we had someone come in who was interested in Lifeline and the ACP, we figured out you've got to try to enroll in Lifeline first, because if you are enrolled in Lifeline, then you do qualify for the ACP. But if they did it in reverse and enrolled for the ACP, but then we figured out that they probably could qualify for Lifeline as well, that application they had to call the NLAD back, the National Verifier back, and have that application just deleted, and then they had to start over again with Lifeline.
Wow.
So it's taking us, but we're getting good at it. So it's taken us a while. We also, part of our requirements is we have to make sure that our customers know about the ACP. So we do the bill messages, and they do state on there, that you can have your Lifeline at one provider and your
ACP benefit.
ACP at another provider. The complaint process, who you can call. We've made sure that our customers know that. When a new customer comes in, we let them know about the ACP, but then also 7 days after they are in service, we send them out a flyer to let them know. If they've changed their internet service at all in any way, we let them know within 7 days, that the ACP is available to them. So we spend quite a bit of time, working through the ACP, and we haven't even gotten to the claim process yet, going through every month and making sure that our snapshot report matches what's in the NLAD, and that, that's the ACP claim. That's not the Lifeline claim that we have to go through as well and match that up. We did some looking last month, and we discovered we had 145 Lifeline customers that were not enrolled in the ACP, or that we knew if they were enrolled. So we've reached out to those customers to let them know that the ACP is available to them, and sign up is easy. You just sign the consent form if you want to bring that discount to us.
So I'm a little bit out of my depth on the details of how that piece of the ACP works. I'll admit that. But in regards to the National Verifier, everyone who wants to qualify for the ACP has to apply through the National Verifier. What if they're already receiving services?
From us?
No, I meant social services, right. Does that streamline their acceptance?
Yeah, there's databases that the national verifier looks at to see, you know, are they on Medicaid? Are they receiving SNAP? Yeah,
Mhm.
there's databases that they look at. And if they can't be qualified through the databases, then they'll ask for documentation to be uploaded. And that's another thing that we learned. If we do the interview process with the customer using our logins, we can't upload documents. So we've learned that we need to help the customer get their own login credentials, and then if documents have to be uploaded, we can help them do that.
Sure sounds like digital skills are important.
Yes,
Yeah.
and there's 3 states that don't use the national verifier. I think it's California, Texas, and Oregon, I believe.
I think Oregon is one of the
Yeah,
states. I think I had a
yeah.
conversation
There's
about
3
that.
states. Otherwise,
Yep.
all the other states do
I'm
use
very
the
grateful that we do use
Yeah,
the national
yeah.
verifier, because that takes that, we don't have to be the decision maker with that.
Ugh.
And USAC just updated their website to go to an enrollment. So they're trying to make it easier. I don't know if you saw that last webinar, but they're trying to make it easier for subscribers to go in and enroll, because it used to be cumbersome. And, you know, and if you're tribal, it's even harder.
Really?
Because of your addresses, their tribal addresses usually don't match, and you've got to place a pin, and it gets very, very difficult for tribal.
I actually remember hearing that now from the gentleman who's the diversity director for the Northern Michigan tribes, for
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
affiliated tribes up there.
Yeah.
And he said just trying to stick a pin in a map has just been a nightmare. And apparently it kind of annoys the applicants. They don't like that.
Yeah.
They're like, no, this is where I live. So
One of the things that I've worked with some companies on is you have to have an account with SAM.gov. I mean, this is not funded through Universal Service like Lifeline. So it's funded through the Treasury Department. So you have to have a SAM.gov account. A lot of municipalities probably already have one of those, and you have to keep it active. If you don't, you have to apply for one. We had a company that everything was active. They didn't get paid, I bet, for 4 or 5 months.
Oh, wow.
And it was kind of a hassle to go back through USAC and try and figure out, you know, where their money was. They ended up getting paid, but it took a lot of emails. USAC is not the most friendly company to work with.
now, do you find it common for reimbursement to be snarly? And has that been your experience too, Sarah?
No, the claim process, I don't think is that difficult. It's you're just looking at numbers, especially since it's $30, you know.
Sure.
You know, it's that's actually not bad.
In general.
There's 2 steps, you know, I put the claim in, and then somebody in the accounting department has to get it to certify it.
Got it. So we're going to move on in just a minute and talk about ACP funding. But does anyone have any questions for the panel about participation before we move on to that? Nope. That's no problem. So, Rye, can you talk a little bit about funding for the ACP? We know that it was predicted to last a lot longer, and it's not going to last as long as they thought. But do you have any thoughts or prognostications or insight into what happens when we run out of money next year?
Yeah, so 14.2 billion originally appropriated for it. When that transitioned over from EBB, they added the remaining about 2 billion that was left in that program onto it, which sounds like a lot of money. But currently we're burning more than 500 million a month to support that, to support the program. And so at current rates, even if nobody else signs up after today, the money will run out around September of 2024. If historical growth rates of enrollees continues, it'll run out sometime around May 2024. And so maybe the FCC outreach program speeds that process up a little bit, and it runs out sometime earlier in the spring of next year. Nevertheless, it's going to be gone before you know it.
Chris from the NTIA is here, so if anyone's interested, they can call or him later and see if he has any insight on the forecast for refunding that program. Sarah, is GRM Networks concerned that the ACP funding will go away? And then how would that impact your business if suddenly you had a group of customers who might not be able to afford the service without a subsidy? How does that work in the real world?
Well, I don't know that we've really discussed that a lot. We've really kind of just worked to get people enrolled in it, accessibility and affordability. I don't know that we would have a lot of people drop our service. I don't know in our area if there's any $0 services. We don't offer that.
Mhm.
We just do the flat $30 off of whatever their service is.
Is there anyone else? Is there anyone out here who is providing ACP for their customers who has given some thought to what happens if that money runs out, or is there any concern about losing customers?
Mhm.
Where they can, apply it toward a level of service. We rarely have residents customers who will take our lifeline level service, which is the lowest service offering. They'll use it to use those dollars toward a higher level package because they need that bandwidth in the home.
Yep.
So it'd be very devastating. Many friend Chris here just shared with me, there's another funding program out there right now for communities to grow enrollment in ACP, and West Virginia just awarded one of those grants. So we're going to be out there trying to get even more people enrolled in the ACP program, which is not going to help on the remaining dollars in the last.
I don't know. I have a kind of a hopeful theory that if we're able to accelerate participation, and it becomes evident that it's a help, then it will be less of a debate about whether it's funded again and more just a conversation about at what level.
Well, one of the other requirements, if you're applying for federal grants, you're required to be an ACP provider.
Mhm.
So what will they do then if ACP goes away, if that's a requirement in a federal grant?
That's an interesting conversation as well. Just so you know, digital navigators help people sign up for the ACP too. So, right. So the question just for everybody, I was wondering if we could just have a little conversation and share ideas about how the industry can work together to ensure the viability and the long-term success of affordability programs like ACP into the future.
Yeah, I think all the things we've heard make the sign-up process easier for the end user, make the program more friendly to the providers that are using it would be good. I think there's a larger question kind of sitting in the room, which is why do we find ourselves in a situation where we need to coupon our way out of this problem? I've heard the word competition a lot, just like floating around the room today. And I think we all know that there are communities that are stuck with one provider. Oftentimes that provider is not necessarily acting in the best interests of those communities. And so whatever we can do to increase competition and make sure that folks actually have a choice in who they get their internet from.
Sarah, do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't know. We just try to provide the best service we can for our customers, and affordability is definitely something that's very important to them.
I think the FCC outreach program will help, and obviously what you're doing too. I think there's schools, I think one of the things in the outreach program is to contact your schools and send flyers home with your kids, to get that word out. Because I know that we had clients when the program was initially starting, they'd never heard of anything such like this. So once again, it's the outreach, and you are required to do advertising about it, and you are required to, inform your customers about it. So, it's just like Lifeline. You've got to advertise it. You got to get it out there. So
Are there any other communities out here who are either providing or not providing ACP that have any insider thoughts to share on that? Okay, everyone's holding their cards real close today. That's okay. I know who's providing the ACP and who isn't, but I won't put anybody on the spot today. So, well, if there are no more questions, is there anything in closing that any of you guys would like to make sure that everyone hears about?
The only other thing I might add is, some of the folks that we've talked to over the last year, we talked to a lot of providers, small and large, about the challenges that they face, especially in rural deployments. And one of the things that crops up when they talk about BEAD is the calculus for them in the deployment of infrastructure changes a lot if ACP exists or doesn't. If they can guarantee that there's $30 a month coming from those households in rural areas who can't otherwise afford it, then that changes, I think, to a non-insignificant amount, how much, appetite they have for going after BEAD dollars and then going for those super rural clusters of households. So another reason that everybody should work together to make sure ACP continues and continues in the way that works best for the households that need it.
All right. Do you see that there's any space, Renee or Sarah, for a little bit more streamlining of the ACP process? Does it seem like there's room for that?
If when a customer goes into the national verifier, if it would just tell them you're eligible for both of these programs, that would be a huge help. And then the other issue is the reminders, the 90-day rule. It sounds good. Okay, well, I've got to give this guy a 90-day notice. Oh, well, wait, now he's late on this bill too, so now I've got to give him notice for this 90 days, but now this one is just 60 days before we shut him off. And then, so I mean, that is, and for us, our billing program does not handle that well, and we're doing those reminders manually, and that's about 90 a month right now.
Okay. About a year, she needs
All right, well, does anyone else have anything else they'd like to add to that? Well, then, thank you very much. And thank you for attending CBAN's Spring Forum this year. And I think that we'd like to take a little break and then invite you all up to the Green Acres room up here to help us celebrate our 5th birthday and have a few drinks. I think Curtis has got some housekeeping things to share at the end here.
Mainly the housekeeping is that we would like you to have a beer or two or a drink or two on us. The man with the tickets, Todd Kilkoff, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not sure why I trusted Todd with the drink tickets, but it looks like there's still some left. So thank you very much to our sponsors that put this event together and help pay for it. And thank you all for coming. If many of you in this room are already members of CBAN, and we greatly appreciate that. If you are not a member of CBAN, your organization, yourself individually, we would love to have you on board. And like I said, providers, communities, advocates, those memberships are all free of charge. So I'm looking at you, Doug. But anybody else out there, we would welcome you to be part of the conversation in the community as we continue growing beyond the 19 states, beyond the 140 current providers, or I should say members across the country. So, all right. So, well, now Todd left to answer the phone, so I don't know where you're going to get your drink tickets, but, oh, he's got them. Go out to that registration stand. There we go. Give everybody 2 drink tickets. Enjoy the hospitality. If you can stick around for a while, keep the conversations going. Thank you for your support, and we hope you will have a great rest of your afternoon. Thanks.